Look, I'm not going to pretend I didn't see it coming. When you grow up as the second child, the other kid, the one who wasn't quite what your parents ordered from the catalogue of dreams, you learn to read the room pretty early. You learn which silences mean disappointment and which ones mean they've just forgotten you're there. My brother Derek got the 100K. I got a text that said, "We believe in tough love. You'll figure it out." Tough love. Right. Because nothing says parental affection like financial abandonment wrapped in a self-help platitude. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. Way back. Because this story doesn't start with the money. It starts with a lifetime of being second place, of being the spare, of being the child who was loved but never quite seen. I was 26 when it happened. Derek was 29. We'd both been out of the house for years by then. Him longer than me, obviously, because Derek did everything first. First to walk, first to graduate, first to get a real job with benefits, and a 401k that our dad could brag about at his Rotary Club meetings. I was the one who took an extra year to finish college because I changed my major twice. I was the one who moved back home for 8 months after a bad breakup and a worse roommate situation. I was the one who worked 3 part-time jobs instead of 1 career track position because I was still finding myself. God, I hated that phrase, finding myself. Like I was a set of keys someone had misplaced. Derek, meanwhile, had been found since birth. Engineering degree from a state school our parents could afford without loans. A job at a firm that designed something important. Bridges, maybe. Infrastructure. I never really knew the details because whenever he talked about work at family dinners, I kind of zoned out. Not out of meanness, but out of self-preservation. Because listening to Derek's accomplishments while sitting in my own failure felt like volunteering for emotional waterboarding. He wore ties to work. He had a LinkedIn profile that made sense, with buzzwords like stakeholder management and cross-functional leadership. He was on track. I was not. But let me tell you about the before. The years that led up to that dinner. Because the 100K wasn't the first sign that I was the spare kid. It was just the loudest, most undeniable proof of something I'd known my whole life. When I was 7, Derek won the school science fair with a volcano that actually erupted on cue. Vinegar and baking soda. Nothing revolutionary. But he'd painted the papier-mâché mountain to look realistic and written up his hypothesis in perfect cursive on a trifold board. My parents drove 3 hours to watch the presentation. They took 1,000,000 photos. My dad carried that trophy to the car like it was made of solid gold and put it on the mantel at home where it stayed for years. When I was 7, I came in second place in the district-wide art contest with a watercolor painting of our dog Murphy. It had taken me weeks. I'd worked on it every day after school or so, mixing colors, trying to get Murphy's fur just right, the way it looked golden in the sunlight. My mum said, "That's nice, honey," and hung it on the fridge under a pizza coupon and a dentist appointment reminder. It stayed there for 2 weeks before it got buried under school permission slips and grocery lists. Derek got trophies on the mantle. I got 2 weeks under a magnet. It wasn't always big things. Most of the time it was small things. Tiny, almost invisible things that added up over years until they formed this weight I carried around without even realizing it was there. Derek got, "We're so proud of you," when he brought home an A. I got, "Well, you tried your best," when I brought home a B+. Derek's school concerts were events. My parents took the afternoon off work, arrived early to get good seats, clapped enthusiastically. My school concerts were obligations. They showed up late, sat in the back, left during the final number to beat traffic. When Derek wanted to join the robotics club, Dad drove him to every meeting and helped him build his robot at home, the two of them hunched over the dining room table with soldering irons and circuit boards. When I wanted to join the art club, Mom said, "That's nice, honey. Just don't let it interfere with your homework." It sounds petty, right? Like I'm tallying up childhood grievances, like some kind of resentment accountant. Like I'm keeping score in a game nobody else knew we were playing. But kids notice this stuff. Kids absorb it like secondhand smoke. It gets into your lungs, your blood, your sense of who you are and what you're worth. By the time I was in middle school, I'd learned my role. I was the creative one, the artistic one, which was code for the one who probably won't make any money, and the one we don't have to take seriously. Derek was the smart one, the responsible one, the one our parents could count on, the one they could brag about, the one who made them look good. I was the wild card, the question mark, the daughter they loved but didn't quite know what to do with. Like a piece of furniture that doesn't fit any room in the house, but you can't quite bring yourself to throw away. Middle school was when the differences between Derek and me really started to crystallize. He was in 8th grade when I was in 6th. He was in all advanced classes, getting straight A's, already thinking about high school and college and his future. I was getting B's and C's, struggling with algebra, spending most of my time drawing in the margins of my notebooks instead of taking notes. My parents hired Derek, a math tutor, to help him prepare for high school geometry. When I brought home a D in pre-algebra, my dad sighed and said, "You need to focus more. Math is important." They didn't hire me a tutor. They just expected me to figure it out. Derek joined the debate team. He won competitions. He traveled to other schools, came home with medals and certificates. My parents went to every competition. They drove hours to watch him argue about policy proposals and constitutional law. I joined the drama club. I got cast in the school musical. A small part, just ensemble, but I was so excited. I practiced my songs every day. I helped paint sets. I memorized everyone's lines, not just my own. My parents came to one performance. 1 out of 6. They said they were busy. Work was hectic. There was a lot going on. But they'd driven 3 hours to watch Derek debate whether the federal government should regulate greenhouse gas emissions. I remember sitting in the dressing room before the final performance, putting on stage makeup, listening to the other kids talk about how many family members were coming to watch. "My grandparents are driving in from Ohio," one girl said. "My aunt and uncle and cousins are all coming," another added. "My whole family's out there," someone else said. "My parents even made a banner." I said nothing. My parents weren't coming. They'd already seen it, they said. Once was enough. Derek had a debate tournament that night. A big one. Regionals, or state qualifiers, or something that mattered. Of course, they went to that instead. I cried in the bathroom during intermission. Not loud, dramatic crying. I couldn't risk anyone hearing me. Just silent tears that I wiped away quickly, and then fixed my makeup and went back out to perform for an audience that didn't include my family. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was being dramatic, that I was too sensitive, that lots of kids had parents who couldn't come to everything. But it did matter. It mattered so much. By high school, the pattern was set in stone. Derek was the success story. I was the other one. He was in AP classes, taking SAT prep courses, visiting college campuses. He was student body treasurer. He was on the academic decathlon team. He had a resume by the time he was 16 UDS. I was in regular classes, struggling to maintain a 3.0 GPA, spending most of my time in the art room or the theatre. I was good at art, really good. My art teacher, Miss Chen, told me I had talent, that I should consider art school, that I could really make something of this if I worked hard. I told my parents about it at dinner one night. Miss Chen thinks I should apply to art schools, I read. She thinks I could get a scholarship. My dad looked up from his plate. Art school? Yeah. For graphic design, maybe, or illustration. And what would you do with that? He asked. I don't know. Design work? Freelance illustration? Lots of things. He frowned. That doesn't sound very stable. But it's what I'm good at, I said. Being good at something doesn't mean you can make a living at it, he said. You need to think practically. What about business? Marketing uses art, doesn't it? I guess, but you should keep your options open, my mom said. Art is a wonderful hobby, honey. But you need a real degree, something that'll get you a real job. Derek was eating his dinner, saying nothing. But I saw him glance at me with something that might have been sympathy. Miss Chen says I could get a scholarship, I repeated quietly. We'll see, my dad said, which was his way of saying no without actually saying no. We didn't see. We never talked about it again. I applied to art schools anyway, in secret. I spent hours on my portfolio. I wrote essays about why art mattered to me, about how I saw the world through color and composition, about how creating things made me feel like I had value. I got accepted to 3 schools. I got offered partial scholarships to 2 of them. When I told my parents, they looked at the financial aid packages and said it wasn't enough. The scholarships only covered half of Wishen. Where would the rest come from? We can't afford that, my dad said, not when there are cheaper options. But this is what I want, I said. Sometimes we don't get what we want, he said. We get what's practical. Derek had gotten into a state school. My parents were thrilled. They talked about it at every family gathering, every church function, every casual conversation with neighbors. Derek's going to State U in the fall. We're so proud. Engineering program. Very prestigious. They were paying his full tuition, room and board, everything. When people asked about me, they said, "Oh, she's still figuring it out." I ended up at State U too. Different major. I started in biology because my parents said it was practical, then switched to English after failing organic chemistry, then landed in graphic design after 2 years of feeling completely lost. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore to cover my expenses. My parents helped with tuition. I'm not saying they didn't help at all, but there was always this undercurrent of, "We're doing you a favor," that made it hard to feel grateful. Every time I thanked them, my dad said, "Just make sure you're taking it seriously. Education is an investment." For Derek, education was a gift. For me, it was a loan I'd be expected to pay back in success and stability, and proof that I hadn't wasted their money. College was when Derek and I really became different people living different lives. He thrived. He joined a fraternity, the kind that did community service and had a good reputation, not the kind that hazed people and got shut down for underage drinking. He studied abroad in Germany for a semester. He did internships every summer at engineering firms, building his resume, making connections. He graduated summa cum laude with a job offer already in hand. My parents went to his graduation and cried happy tears. They threw him a party. They bought him a new laptop and a briefcase and paid his first month's rent at his new apartment. My college experience was different. I joined clubs and quit them. I dated a guy who played bass in a terrible band and thought he was going to be the next Kurt Cobain. We broke up after he asked me to pay his rent because the band needed new equipment. I changed my major twice. I struggled with depression. I didn't have a name for yet. Just this constant, heavy feeling that I was failing at being a person. I went to class. I did the work. I passed. But I wasn't thriving. I was surviving. I graduated on time, technically, but only because I took summer classes to make up for the semester I'd completely phoned in while dealing with the breakup and the depression and the overwhelming sense that I had no idea what I was doing with my life. My parents came to my graduation. They clapped. They took photos. They took me to dinner afterward at a chain restaurant. But I remember standing there in my Corwin gown, watching them smile and thinking. They're relieved I finished, not proud. Relieved. Relieved that I hadn't dropped out, hadn't completely failed, hadn't embarrassed them, but not proud. Because graduating college isn't impressive when you're just meeting the bare minimum expectations. Derek had exceeded expectations. I'd just met them. My early 20s were a blur of bad jobs and worse apartments. I worked retail. I worked food service. I worked as a receptionist at a dentist's office, where the dentist, a man in his 50s who wore too much cologne and made too much eye contact, hit on me every single day until I quit without notice and blocked his number. I was trying to build a career as a graphic designer, but trying is doing a lot of work in that sentence. What I really mean is that I was freelancing, taking on projects from Craigslist and Fiverr and sketchy startup founders who wanted me to design their entire brand identity for $200 and exposure. I was broke. Constantly, exhaustingly broke. The kind of broke where you check your bank account before buying a coffee. Where you count quarters to see if you can afford gas. Where you eat pasta 5 nights a week because it's cheap and filling and you can make it stretch. I lived in a studio apartment that cost $800 a month, which was cheap for the area but still consumed half my income, and had a bathroom so small you had to stand sideways to close the door. The radiator clanked all night. There was a water stain on the ceiling that grew every time it rained. The neighbors above me fought constantly, screaming matches at 2 a.m. that made the walls vibrate. I stopped going out with friends because I couldn't afford drinks, and I was tired of making excuses. Come out tonight. It'll be fun. I can't. I have an early morning. Come get dinner with us. I already ate. Let's go see that movie. I'm not really into action movies. Eventually, they stopped inviting me. Meanwhile, Derek was thriving. He got promoted, then promoted again. He bought a new car, a sensible sedan with good gas mileage and a backup camera. He started dating Amanda, who was perfect in that infuriating way where you can't even hate her because she's genuinely nice. She was a nurse. She volunteered at animal shelters. She brought homemade cookies to family dinners. Derek was living the life our parents had imagined for both of us. I was living in a studio apartment with a broken radiator, eating 99-cent ramen, wondering where I'd gone wrong. Family dinners became a minefield. My parents loved Sunday dinners, this whole Norman Rockwell thing where the family gathered around the table, ate a home-cooked meal, and caught up on each other's lives. It was supposed to be wholesome. Bonding. For me, it was torture. Because every Sunday was a reminder of how differently Derek and I were doing. The conversations followed the same pattern every single time. So, Derek, how's work going? Great, Dad. We're ahead of schedule on the new project. The client's really happy. That's wonderful. You've always been so good at managing timelines. Must have gotten that from me. Dad would laugh. Remember when you were in high school and you organized that entire fundraiser? Oh, I remember. Mum would chime in. You were so responsible even then. Derek would smile modestly. It's just about staying organized and communicating clearly with the team. That's my boy, Dad would say. Then they'd turn to me. Every single time. And how are things with you, honey? Good, I'd say. Busy. Still doing the freelance thing? The freelance thing, like it was a phase. Like I was a teenager selling friendship bracelets at the mall instead of a grown woman trying to build a career. Yeah, I'd say. Still freelancing. Have you thought about looking for something more stable? My dad would ask. Every time. The same question. Maybe a job at an agency? Something with benefits? I've thought about it, I'd say, which was code for I've applied to 100 agencies and nobody's hiring entry-level designers with no agency experience, which I can't get without someone hiring me first, so I'm stuck in this catch-22 forever. Well, just don't wait too long, he'd say. You don't want to wake up at 35 and realize you've wasted your 20s. Thanks, Dad. Super helpful. Really boosting my confidence here. How's the money situation? Mum would ask, with that careful, concerned tone that made it clear she was worried I was failing. Are you doing okay? I'm fine, I'd lie. Because if you need help, I'm fine, I'd repeat, more firmly. Because I knew that help came with strings, with lectures, with I told you so's about how I should have chosen a more practical path. Derek would sit there, eating his pot roast, looking vaguely uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to defend me or change the subject. Amanda started coming to dinners about a year before the 100K announcement. She was sweet, polite, the kind of woman who brought wine to dinner. Good wine, the kind that costs more than $10 a bottle, and complimented my mom's cooking, and laughed at my dad's bad jokes. She asked me about my work with genuine interest. What kind of projects are you working on? Do you have a favorite client? I wanted to like her. I did like her, honestly. But sitting across from her, watching her be perfect and put together, and clearly making my parents think. Finally, someone in this family has their life figured out. Made me feel even worse about my own situation. She was everything I wasn't. Stable, successful, partnered with the golden child. I was broke, unstable, and eating dinner with my parents because I didn't have anywhere better to be on Sunday nights. About 6 months before the big announcement, I made the mistake of being honest. We were at Sunday dinner. Mum had made pot roast, her specialty, the one she made when she wanted everyone in a good mood. She asked how things were going, and instead of saying fine, I said, actually kind of rough. She looked immediately concerned, setting down her fork. What's wrong, sweetheart? Just money stuff, I said, trying to keep my tone casual. Freelancing is unpredictable, you know? Some months are great, some months are slow. I'm trying to build up my savings, but it's been hard. I thought maybe this would be the moment where they offered to help. Not a lot, just something. A few $100 to take the pressure off, a loan I could pay back. Just something to show they cared, that they saw me struggling and wanted to ease the burden. Instead, my dad said, "Have you thought about getting a part-time job to supplement the freelancing?" I stared at him. I'm already working 70 hours a week. He frowned. Then maybe you need to be more strategic about which projects you take. I take every project that pays, I said. My voice was rising slightly, frustration leaking through. I can't afford to be picky then. Then maybe freelancing isn't viable long term, he said, in that reasonable, logical tone he used when he'd already decided he was right. Maybe it's time to consider something more traditional. A regular job, benefits, stability. I felt something crack inside me. Not break, just crack, like a windshield after a rock hits it. The glass is still intact, but there's a fracture running through it, and you know it's only a matter of time before the whole thing shatters. Right, I said. I'll think about that. Derek was quiet. He was cutting his pot roast into very small, precise pieces, his jaw tight. Amanda looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. My mum changed the subject. So, Amanda, how's work at the hospital? And just like that, we moved on. I didn't bring up money again. The months leading up to the dinner, I felt myself withdrawing. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone would notice. I just stopped trying so hard. Stopped pretending I was fine when I wasn't. Stopped putting on a happy face at family dinners. Stopped forcing enthusiasm for Derek's accomplishments. I was tired. So deeply, endlessly tired. Tired of being broke. Tired of comparing myself to Derek and coming up short every single time. Tired of feeling like a disappointment. I stopped calling my parents first. Stopped texting updates about my life. Started cancelling plans more often. Can't make dinner this week. I have a deadline. Can't come to Derek's birthday thing, I'm not feeling great. Can't do lunch, I'm swamped with work. Some of it was true. Some of it wasn't. Mostly, I just couldn't stand being around them anymore. Couldn't stand the comparisons, the concern, the thinly veiled disappointment. My therapist. Yes, I'd started seeing a therapist, paying out of pocket because I couldn't afford real insurance, said I was setting boundaries. You're protecting yourself, she said. That's healthy. It didn't feel healthy. It felt lonely. But I guess lonely was better than constantly hurt. And then came the dinner. It was a Sunday in March. The weather was just starting to warm up. That early spring moment when winter is finally loosening its grip and you can almost believe summer is coming. Mum had called me earlier in the week. Dinner on Sunday, she'd said. I'm making pot roast. Pot roast meant something important was happening. Mum only made pot roast for special occasions. What's the occasion? I asked. Can't I just make my family a nice dinner? She said. In that tone that meant there was definitely an occasion, but she didn't want to say yet. Sure, I said. I'll be there. I almost didn't go. I sat in my apartment that Sunday afternoon, staring at my closet, trying to decide what to wear, and seriously considered texting to cancel. Not feeling well. Rain check? But I knew that would just delay the inevitable. And besides, I was curious. What was the occasion? Maybe Derek and Amanda were engaged. That would make sense. They'd been dating for over a year. They were at that stage where engagement was the logical next step. If that was it, I could handle it. I'd smile and congratulate them, and drink too much wine and go home and cry in my apartment like a normal jealous younger sister. I put on jeans and a sweater, nothing fancy, because I'd learned not to try too hard, and drove to my parents' house. Derek and Amanda were already there when I arrived. Amanda had brought wine, as usual. They were in the living room with my parents, laughing about something. Hey, Derek said when I walked in. There she is. He hugged me. He smelled like expensive cologne and success. Hey, I said. Traffic was terrible. It hadn't been. I'd just sat in my car in their driveway for 10 minutes, working up the courage to go inside. Amanda brought that wine you liked, Mom said. The red from that winery we went to last summer. Oh, great, I said, even though I didn't remember the wine or the winery. We made small talk. I poured myself a very large glass of wine. Dinner was pot roast, mashed potatoes, roasted carrots, homemade rolls. My mum had gone all out, definitely an announcement. We made it through appetizers, cheese and crackers, nothing fancy. We made it through the meal. Derek talked about work. Amanda talked about a difficult case at the hospital. A kid, who'd come in with a broken arm, turned out to be abuse. They'd had to call CPS. Heavy stuff, but she told it well, and my parents listened with appropriate concern. I pushed food around my plate and drank my wine and waited. And then Dad cleared his throat. That decisive little ahem that meant a speech was coming. Mum smiled. Derek smiled. Amanda smiled. I felt my stomach drop. So, Dad said, setting down his fork with a soft clink against his plate. Your mother and I have been talking. Here it is, I thought. The engagement announcement. We know how hard it is for young people to get started these days. He continued, looking at Derek. Only Derek. Not me. Just Derek. The housing market, the economy, student loans, all of it. It's not like it was when we were your age. I waited. My wine glass was empty. I wanted to refill it, but didn't want to draw attention to myself. Back when we were starting out, you could buy a house on one income. Dad continued. Now? Impossible. The prices are insane. And we know you kids are trying so hard, but it's just a different world. We want to help, Mom added. Oh no. Oh no, oh no, oh no. So we've decided to give Derek and Amanda $100,000 for a down payment on a house. The number sat in the air like a slap. $100,000. The room went silent. except for the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I don't know what my face did. I don't know if I smiled or blinked or just stared. I remember the room feeling suddenly very small and very bright, like all the oxygen had been sucked out and replaced with harsh fluorescent light. I remember the sound of Amanda gasping a little, "Oh," of surprise that sounded genuine. I remember Derek laughing, actually laughing, and saying, "Are you serious? Oh my God, Dad, I don't know what to say. That's incredible." "We're so proud of you," Mom said, reaching across the table to squeeze Derek's hand. Her eyes were shining with tears, happy tears. "You've worked so hard. You've been so responsible. You deserve this. You deserve this." Those 3 words hit me like a punch to the stomach. You deserve this, meaning Derek deserves this, meaning Derek has earned this, meaning Derek is worth $100,000 of our money. I looked down at my plate. There was a piece of pot roast I hadn't touched, sitting in a pool of congealed gravy. I focused on it very hard, because if I looked up, I was going to cry, and I wasn't going to give them that. "This is going to change everything," Amanda said, and she was crying too. Happy crying. "We've been looking at houses, but everything's so expensive, and we thought we'd have to save for years, and oh my God, thank you so much. We just want to see you kids succeed," Dad said, still not looking at me. "We want to help you build a good life. You kids, plural. But only one of us was getting $100,000. I waited. I waited for Dad to turn to me and say, "And of course, we're going to help you too." I waited for Mom to say, "We want to be fair. We know you've been struggling. Here's something for you." I waited for someone, anyone, to acknowledge that I was sitting right there. Nobody did. They were too busy celebrating Derek. Amanda was already pulling out her phone, probably texting her friends or looking up houses or something. Derek was beaming, looking like a kid on Christmas morning. My parents were glowing with that satisfied pride of people who'd just done something important. And me? I was doing math. $100,000. That was more than I'd made in the last 3 years combined. That was my rent for 10 years. That was student loans paid off, credit card debt erased, a car that didn't break down every other month. That was stability. That was the kind of help that changes a life. And they were just giving it to him, not splitting it, not dividing it fairly, not even acknowledging that I might need help too, just giving it to Derek, because he deserved it. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. "What about me?" I said. My voice came out smaller than I intended, almost childlike. The table went silent. It wasn't a surprised silence. It was the silence of people who had already had this conversation, already made their decision, and were now annoyed that I was questioning it. My dad looked at me for the first time all night. Really looked at me. "What about you?" he said. Not angry, not defensive, just confused. Like he genuinely didn't understand why I was asking. Are you helping me too?" The silence stretched. I could see it in their faces. The answer. The decision they'd already made. "Sweetheart," my mom said carefully, in that gentle voice she used when she was about to say something she thought was wise and loving, but was actually just hurtful. "You're in a different place than Derek right now." "I'm in a different place because I don't have any money," I said. My voice was rising, but I couldn't stop it. "That's exactly why I could use help. We think it's important for you to build your own way," Dad said, using his reasonable voice. The one he used in business meetings. The one that said, "I've thought about this logically, and you're being emotional. Derek has proven himself. He's established. He has a stable career. He's financially responsible. He's ready for this kind of responsibility. And I'm not. It wasn't a question. You're still figuring things out," Mom said, like that was a kind way to put it. "And that's okay. Everyone moves at their own pace, but we don't want to enable dependence. We don't want to give you money that might become a crutch to your head." "A crutch?" I almost laughed. The sound that came out was more like a choke. "You think giving me help would make me dependent?" "We think you're capable of more than you realize," Dad said. He was looking at me with that expression parents get when they think they're teaching an important life lesson. And sometimes people need to be pushed to reach their potential. Sometimes struggle is what makes us grow. "So you're making me struggle. Some purpose. For my own good." "We're giving you the opportunity to prove yourself," Tate said. "That's worth more than money." "Is it though?" I wanted to scream. Is the opportunity to keep drowning really worth more than a life raft? But I didn't say that. I said, "So Derek gets $100,000 and I get tough love." "Exactly," Dad said, looking relieved that I'd named it, like I was finally understanding. "You'll thank us someday. When you've made it on your own, when you've built something yourself, you'll understand why this was the right choice." I looked at Derek. He was staring at his plate, his jaw tight, his hands gripping his fork and knife like he was trying to hold something back. He wouldn't look at me. Amanda looked uncomfortable, like she wanted to be anywhere else. "This is amazing," I said. My voice sounded flat, dead. "Congratulations, Derek. Really. This is great." "Hey," he started. "Maybe we should—" "I have to go," I said, standing up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I have a project deadline." "You just got here," Mom said. She looked hurt, confused, like she couldn't understand why I wasn't happily celebrating my brother's good fortune. "Yeah, well, work doesn't stop just because it's Sunday." "Honey, don't leave upset," Mom said. "I'm not upset," I lied. I grabbed my purse, my coat. "I'm happy for Derek. Really. This is wonderful. You guys are going to have an amazing house." I walked out before anyone could stop me. I sat in my car in their driveway for 23 minutes. I know it was 23 minutes because I watched the clock on my dashboard tick by, second by second, unable to make myself turn the key and drive away. I watched through the living room window as they went back to dinner. Watched them laughing, probably talking about house hunting, about neighborhoods and school districts, and whether they wanted a yard or a condo. Watched them celebrating Derek's good fortune with wine and dessert and happy conversation. Watched them move on, like I had never been there at all. I thought about my apartment. The studio with the broken radiator and the water stain and the neighbors who screamed at each other at 2 a.m. I thought about my bank account. The $640 undated sitting in savings that I'd been so proud of. Like it was some kind of achievement instead of barely enough to cover an emergency. I thought about the last time I'd gone out to dinner at a real restaurant. Not fast food or takeout, but a real sit-down restaurant with cloth napkins and a server, and realized it had been over a year. I thought about how I'd been secretly hoping, in some pathetic, desperate corner of my brain, that maybe they'd offer me something tonight. Not $100,000. I wasn't delusional. Just something. A few thousand. Enough to breathe a little easier. Enough to prove that they saw me struggling and cared enough to help. And then I thought, they don't think I'm worth it. Not in a mean way. Not in a deliberately cruel way. They just genuinely believed that Derek deserved help, and I didn't. That he had earned their investment, and I hadn't. That he was the success story, and I was the cautionary tale. That giving him money was an investment in his future. But giving me money would be enabling my failure. Derek came out before I left. He tapped on my window. I jumped. I'd been so lost in my thoughts, I hadn't heard him approach. I rolled down the window. "Hey," he said. He looked uncomfortable. "Good. Hey, you okay?" "I'm fine." "You don't seem fine." "Well, I am." He shifted his weight, hands in his pockets. "Look, I know this is weird." "Weird?" I said. "You think this is weird?" "Poor choice of words," he said. I know you're probably feeling." "Feeling what, Derek?" "Like my parents just told me I'm not worth investing in. Like they handed you $100,000 and gave me nothing and expect me to just smile and be happy for you." "It's not personal," he said. I actually laughed. The sound was bitter and sharp. "Not personal?" "Right. They gave you money because you're responsible and I'm not. How is that not personal?" "They just want you to what? Suffer? Struggle? Prove myself?" I shook my head. "I've been proving myself for years, Derek. Working 3 jobs, barely sleeping. And it's never enough. It's never going to be enough." "That's not true." "Isn't it? Tell me honestly, do you think they would have given me that money if I were in your position?" He didn't answer. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. "Enjoy your house," I said. I started the car. "I hope it's everything you want." I drove away before he could respond. I cried the entire drive home. Not pretty crying, ugly crying. The kind where your face gets blotchy and your nose runs and you can barely see the road through your tears. I had to pull over twice because I couldn't see well enough to drive safely. I sat in a gas station parking lot at 9 p.m. on a Sunday night, sobbing into my steering wheel, while families pumped gas and bought snacks and went about their normal lives. And I thought, this is it. This is the moment that changes everything. Not because they'd given Derek money, but because they'd made it clear, undeniably clear, that I wasn't worth the same investment. That I was less than. Other than. Not quite good enough. And I was done. Done trying to prove myself. Done showing up to family dinners where I felt like a ghost. Done pretending it didn't hurt. I was done. I didn't make a big announcement. I didn't send a long emotional text explaining my feelings. I didn't unfriend them on Facebook or block their numbers or make any dramatic gesture that would force a conversation. I just stopped. Stopped calling. Stopped texting first. Stopped showing up. At first, they didn't notice. Or if they did, they didn't say anything. My mum sent a text about a week after the dinner. Hope you're doing well. Miss you at dinner. 3 exclamation points. Mum loved exclamation points. She used them like they could paper over any uncomfortable feeling. I didn't respond right away. I opened the message, read it, and then closed my phone and went back to work. 2 days later, I sent back. Busy with work. Talk soon. Short, neutral. The kind of message that couldn't be interpreted as angry, but also couldn't be interpreted as warm. Okay, love you, she wrote back. I didn't say it back. 2 weeks later, she texted again. Everything okay? Haven't heard from you. Yeah, just busy. Lots of projects. Okay, let me know if you need anything. That was the thing about my mom. She wanted to help, but only in ways that were easy. Only in ways that didn't require her to actually see what I needed. I needed them to acknowledge that the 100K thing was fucked up. But that would require uncomfortable conversation, conflict, admission of wrongdoing. So instead, she sent cheerful texts with exclamation points and offered vague help that would never materialize into anything concrete. The 3rd week, Dad called. I was in the middle of a project, designing a logo for a startup that wanted something modern but also classic, minimalist, but also eye-catching. Which is client speak for, we have no idea what we want, and we'll know it when we see it. I let it go to voicemail. He didn't leave a message. He called again the next day. This time I answered. Hello? Hey, kiddo? His voice was cheerful. Too cheerful. How are you? Fine. Busy. Too busy to call your old man? There it was. The guilt trip disguised as a joke. I've had a lot of projects, I said. That's great. Keeping busy is good. He paused. Your mom says you haven't been to dinner in a few weeks. Yeah, like I said. Busy. You have to eat anyway, he said. Might as well eat with family, right? I didn't respond. Everything okay? He asked. His tone shifted slightly. Less jovial, more concerned. You seem distant. Distant. That was a nice way of putting it. I'm fine, I said. Just focused on work. Well, don't be a stranger, he said. We miss you. Did they? Did they really? Or did they just miss having a full table on Sunday nights? I'll try to make it to dinner soon. I lied. Great, your mom's making lasagna this week. Sounds good. I didn't go. The first month was the hardest. Not because I missed them exactly, but because I missed the idea of them. I missed having parents I could call when something good happened. Parents who would be proud of me, excited for me, supportive. I missed the fantasy family I'd been pretending we were. All my life I'd been telling myself that they loved me, that they wanted the best for me, that the comparisons and the criticisms and the favoritism were just family dynamics, normal stuff, stuff everyone dealt with. But the 100K had ripped away that fantasy. It had made it impossible to pretend anymore. They loved me. I believed that. But they didn't believe in me. They didn't think I was worth investing in. And that hurt more than I could articulate. I'd pick up my phone a dozen times a day out of habit. See something funny, a weird sign, a strange customer interaction, and think I should text Mom. And then I'd remember. And I'd put the phone down. I'd be working on a project and think, Dad would be interested in this. And then I'd remember. And I'd keep working. I'd see Derek's name pop up in my family group chat. Photos of him and Amanda looking at houses, excited updates about their search. And I'd feel this weird mix of anger and sadness and something that might have been loneliness. I muted the group chat. I cried a lot that first month. Not dramatic, sobbing breakdowns. Just this constant, low-grade sadness that sat in my chest like a weight. I'd be fine all day. Working, running errands, functioning like a normal person. And then I'd get home and just collapse. I'd lie on my couch in the dark and feel the full weight of it on my. I was alone. Really, truly alone in a way I'd never been before. Because I'd cut off the people who were supposed to be my safety net, my support system, my family. And I was terrified that I'd made a huge mistake. What if I couldn't make it on my own? What if they were right? That I did need to be pushed? That I was being too sensitive? That pulling away was just me being dramatic? What if I failed without them? But then I'd remember the dinner. The way my dad had looked at Derek with pride and at me with nothing. The way my mum had said, "You're in a different place." Like that was a kind explanation instead of a condemnation. The way nobody had thought to say, "Let's help both our kids." And the fear would turn back into anger. And the anger would turn into determination. Fine, I'd think. If they don't think I'm worth investing in, I'll prove them wrong. I'll prove I don't need them. I'll build something so big they'll regret not believing in me. I told my therapist about the dinner, about the money, about walking out, about cutting contact. She listened, her face carefully neutral in that therapist way. "How are you feeling about your decision?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "Sometimes I think I'm doing the right thing. Sometimes I think I'm being petty." "Those things aren't mutually exclusive," Sheen said. "What do you mean? You can be doing the right thing for you and still have complex feelings about it. Protecting yourself doesn't mean you're not allowed to feel sad or guilty or conflicted." "I feel all of those things, Eisen. That's normal." "Is it normal to want to call them and scream at them and also never speak to them again at the same time?" She smiled slightly. "Yes, that's very normal." Maya was the only person who knew the full story. I told her everything over drinks one night. The dinner, the money, the decision to pull back. She listened, her eyes getting wider and wider. "Holy shit," she said when I finished. "Yeah. That's so fucked up." "Yeah." "And you're not talking to them?" "Not really. I mean, I respond to texts. But I'm not initiating contact. I'm not going to dinners. I'm just stepping back." "How does that feel?" "Terrible," I admitted. "And also kind of liberating." She nodded. "Makes sense. They really just gave him $100,000 and nothing 2 years in. Not even an explanation, just, you need to prove yourself. While he gets a house. While he gets a house." She shook her head. "I'm sorry. That's really shitty. Thanks. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I said. "Keep working, I guess. Keep trying to make it on my own." "And then what?" They'll see you're successful and suddenly decide you were worth investing in after all? Maybe. Or maybe you'll realize you don't need their validation anymore. I looked at her. Is that what you think I should do? I think you should do whatever makes you happy, she said. But I also think, I don't know, sometimes the best revenge is just living well, building a life you're proud of, not for them, but for you. Living well is the best revenge, I said. Exactly. I thought about that for a long time. The second month, the sadness burned off and left anger in its place. I was furious. Furious at my parents for their hypocrisy, for claiming they wanted me to succeed while actively choosing not to help me succeed. Furious at Derek for accepting the money without even questioning the fairness of it. Without saying, hey, maybe you should help my sister too. Furious at myself for caring, for still wanting their approval, for being 26 years old and feeling like a child begging for scraps of attention. But mostly, I channeled the anger into work. I took every project that came my way. A logo for an essential oils MLM? Sure, why not? A website for a real estate agent who wanted luxury but approachable. Great social media graphics for a life coach who spelled definitely as definitely. I'll take it. I worked 70-hour weeks, 80-hour weeks. I stopped sleeping normal hours, stopped eating regular meals, stopped doing anything that wasn't directly related to making money. I was exhausted all the time, constantly bone-tired in a way that coffee couldn't fix. But the number in my savings account was growing, slowly, painfully slowly. But growing. $800, $200, $1,000. Every dollar felt like a small victory. Every project completed felt like proof that I could do this. I didn't need their help. I didn't need their money. I was going to make it on my own. The tiny house thing started as procrastination. I'd be working on a project, some tedious mind-numbing logo revision where the client kept saying, "Can you make it pop more?" And I'd need a break. So I'd watch YouTube videos. At first, it was random stuff. Cooking videos, makeup tutorials, true crime documentaries. But then, the algorithm recommended a tiny house tour. $20,000, tiny house built from scratch. I clicked out of curiosity. And I was hooked. The video was a tour of this tiny house, maybe 200 square feet, that a couple had built themselves. It had a sleeping loft, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom with a composting toilet, big windows that let in tons of natural light. It was beautiful. Not in a fancy HGTV way, but in a simple, intentional way. Everything in the house had a purpose. Nothing was wasted. It was efficient and clever and theirs. They talked about how they'd built it over 2 years, working weekends and evenings, learning as they went. They'd spent $20,000 total. $20,000. That was less than a down payment on a regular house. Less than a car. Less than Derek's engagement ring probably cost. And they owned it outright. No mortgage, no landlord, no debt. They lived on land they'd bought for cheap in rural Oregon. 5 acres for $15,000. Total cost of land and house. $35,000. $35,000 for complete housing security. I watched the video 3 times. Then I watched 10 more tiny house videos. Then I fell down a rabbit hole of off-grid living, sustainable building, homesteading. I started to realize this could work. This could actually work. I didn't need $100,000 for a down payment on a house I couldn't afford. I needed $30,000 from $40,000 for land and materials to build something small and simple and entirely mine. And that felt achievable. Not easy, not fast, but achievable. I made a spreadsheet. God, I love that spreadsheet. It became my entire personality for weeks. Tiny house budget. Land. $25,000. 35,000 10 acres, rural. Materials. $15,000, $20,000. Lumber, windows, doors, roofing, insulation. Solar setup. $5,000. Panels, battery bank, inverter. Well drilling. $3,000, $5,000. Tools. $2,000 if I didn't already own them. Must contingency. $5,000. Total, $50,000. $72,000. Okay, so more than the couple in the video, but still doable. I had about $1,500 saved, so I needed $53,500 more. At my current rate, saving maybe $100 a month if I was lucky. That would take 9 years, and 9 years, that was too long. I needed to save faster. I sat down and made another spreadsheet. Current monthly expenses. Rent, $800. Utilities, $100. Phone, $50. Internet, $60. Groceries, $300. Gas, $80. Restaurants, coffee, $150. Entertainment, $50. Missy, $100. Total, $1,690. Current monthly income, average. Freelance, $2,200. Monthly savings in $510. That wasn't enough, not even close. I needed to cut expenses and increase income. I became ruthless. Restaurants/coffee. Cut to zero. I bought a French press and started making coffee at home. I stopped meeting friends for dinner or drinks. I stopped buying lunch between projects. I cooked everything at home. Boring food, cheap food. Rice and beans, pasta. Chicken when it was on sale. Eggs, oatmeal. I lost 10 pounds that first month. Not from exercise, but from eating like a college student. Entertainment. Cut to zero. I cancelled Netflix, Hulu, Spotify. Everything. I pirated shows when I wanted to watch something, which made me feel like a criminal, but saved me $30 a month. Miss. Cut to almost zero. No new clothes. No random Amazon purchases. No I deserve this treats. Nothing. I stopped shopping for fun. Stopped browsing. If I needed something, genuinely needed it, I bought it secondhand or from the dollar store. New monthly expenses. $1,390. Monthly savings and on $810 and better, but still not enough. I needed to increase income. So I started stacking side hustles like I was training for the Hustle Olympics. Side hustle number 1. Part-time job at a bookstore. Minimum wage, but it was steady. And I got a 20% employee discount on books I couldn't afford to buy anyway. I worked Saturday mornings and 2 evenings a week. That added $500 a month. Side hustle number 2. Online surveys. I signed up for every survey site I could find. Most surveys paid $13 and took 20 minutes, which meant I was essentially making $39 an hour, well below minimum wage. But I did them while watching TV or eating dinner, or any other time I had 5 free minutes. That added maybe $100 a month. Side hustle, Burberry and selling stuff. I went through my apartment like a tornado. Clothes I hadn't worn in a year? Sold. Books I'd already read? Sold. Furniture I didn't absolutely need? Sold. Kitchen gadgets I never used? Sold. I put everything on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist and watched my apartment slowly empty out. It felt good. Cathartic. Like I was shedding a skin. That first month, I made £800 selling my stuff. After that, it slowed down. I didn't have infinite things to sell, but I kept listing things. An old laptop, a desk chair, a set of dishes. Every sale felt like progress. Side hustle number 4. Overflow work from other designers. I reached out to every designer I knew and said, if you ever have work you can't take on, send it my way. Some of them did. The work was boring, resizing images, formatting documents, making small tweaks to existing designs. The kind of grunt work that nobody wants to do but has to get done. It paid terribly, $20, $30 per task, usually taking an hour or two, but it added up. That added another $300, $400 a month. New monthly income. 3,100 pounds, 3,200 tools. New monthly savings. 1,710, 1,810 better. Much better. At that rate, I could save £50 in about 2.5 years. Still a long time, but manageable. Doable. I could do this. My life became very small, very focused, very lonely. I worked all the time. Freelance projects during the day, bookstore shifts at night, surveys while I ate dinner, overflow design work on Sundays. I stopped going out. Friends would text, "Want to grab dinner?" "Can't, I'm working." "Come out for drinks tonight?" "Wish I could, but I have a deadline." "Movie this weekend?" "I'm working doubles at the bookstore, sorry." Eventually, they stopped asking. Not because they were mean, but because I'd said no so many times that they just assumed I'd keep saying no. And they were right. I would have. Because every time I went out, it cost money. And every dollar I spent on drinks or movies or dinner was a dollar that wasn't going into my savings account. A dollar that wasn't getting me closer to freedom. I stopped posting on social media. What was I going to post? Photos of my empty apartment? Screenshots of my bank account with increasingly large numbers? I didn't want to explain what I was doing. Didn't want people asking questions or offering unsolicited advice or telling me I was crazy. So I just disappeared. Stopped updating Instagram. Stopped scrolling through Facebook. Stopped responding to comments. I became a ghost in my own life. Maya noticed. "I'm worried about you," she said one day when we met for coffee. A rare exception I made because I missed her and needed human interaction before I went completely feral. "I'm fine," I said. "You don't seem fine. You look exhausted." I was exhausted. I had dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. My hair was in a permanent ponytail. I was wearing clothes I'd owned since college because I refused to buy anything new. I'm working a lot, I said. Too much. I have goals. What goals? I hesitated. I hadn't told her about the tiny house plan yet. Hadn't told anyone. But I needed to tell someone. I'm saving up to buy land, I said, and build a tiny house. She stared at me. You're what? I'm going to buy land, build a tiny house, live off-grid. Are you serious? Completely. Why? Because I want to own something. Because I'm tired of paying rent to live in a shitty apartment. Because I want freedom, because I want to prove I can do it. She was quiet for a long time. How much have you saved so far? She asked. Almost $5,000. In how long? 3 months. Her eyes widened. Jesus. No wonder you look exhausted. It's fine, I said. I'm fine. Are you? Yes. You're working like 80 hours a week, living like a monk, and you've cut yourself off from everyone. I haven't cut myself off. When's the last time you did something fun? She asked. When's the last time you went out? Saw friends? Did anything that wasn't work? I couldn't remember. This is temporary, I said. Once I hit my goal, things will go back to normal. Will they? Yes. She didn't look convinced. I just don't want you to burn out, she said gently, or wake up one day and realize you've spent years of your life doing nothing but working. I'm building something, I said. That's not nothing. I know, I miss you, and I'm worried. Don't be, I said. I know what I'm doing. I did know what I was doing. I was running. From my family, from my feelings, from the hurt. But running toward something too. Toward land. Toward a house. Toward a life that was entirely mine. And maybe I was doing it in an unhealthy way. Maybe I was sacrificing too much. But I didn't know how else to do it. I didn't know how to move forward without throwing every ounce of energy I had into proving them wrong. 18 months after the dinner, I had $28,000 in my savings account, $28,000. I sat on my couch, the one piece of furniture I hadn't sold because I needed somewhere to sit, and stared at my bank account on my phone. $28,237.64 to be exact. I'd done it. I'd saved more money than I'd ever had in my life. More money than I thought I was capable of saving. And I was so close to being able to buy land. I started looking seriously. I'd been casually browsing rural real estate sites for months. But now I was ready to actually pull the trigger. I learned some things. 1. Rural land is cheaper than you'd think. 5 acres, 2 hours from the city. $15,000, $25,000. 10 acres, 3 hours out, $25,000 and $40,000. 20 acres in the absolute middle of nowhere, $40,000. 60 dönum. Land without utilities is way cheaper. A plot with water, electric and sewer access already run to it. 50,000 for 5 acres. A plot with nothing, $20,000 for 10 acres. I didn't need utilities. I was planning to go off-grid anyway. 3. Sellers are willing to negotiate, especially if you're a cash buyer and especially if the land has been sitting for months or years, especially if you're willing to close quickly. I spent every weekend driving out to look at properties. I'd plug coordinates into my GPS and drive 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours into the middle of nowhere, winding through back roads and dirt paths to see plots of land that looked nothing like their online photos. Most of it was garbage, swamps that flooded every springs, lots that were so steep you'd need a mountain goat to access them, parcels that were landlocked with no legal road access, properties with HOAs and building restrictions that would make a tiny house impossible. But I kept looking, and then I found it. Listing. 10 acres. Ridge County. $32,000. Description. Wooded parcel with seasonal creek. Mostly level terrain. No utilities, no restrictions, cash only. The photos were terrible. Dark, grainy images that looked like they'd been taken on a flip phone in 2005. But I could see past the bad photography. Trees. So many trees. A mix of pine and oak and maple. Thick enough for privacy, but not so overgrown that it would be impossible to clear space. A creek running through the back portion. Not a huge creek, but enough water to support wildlife and maybe even use for irrigation. Relatively flat land near the front, perfect for building. No power lines, no roads, no neighbors visible in any of the photos. It was perfect. I called the listing agent immediately. "Hi, I'm calling about the property in Ridge County. The 10 acres listed at $32,000. "Oh, yes," she sounded surprised, like she wasn't used to getting calls about it. "Are you interested in seeing it?" "Yes, when can I come look?" "How about tomorrow morning?" "Perfect." I drove out the next day. It was early November, cold and grey, the kind of day where the sky looks like it might snow even though it's too early for that. The listing agent, a woman in her 30s named Sarah, wearing jeans and boots that suggested she knew her way around rural property, met me at what would eventually be the driveway. Right now, it was just a dirt path barely wide enough for one car. "So this is it," she said, gesturing around. 10 acres, mostly wooded. "The property line runs along that ridge," she pointed, "down to the creek, back up to that cluster of pine trees, and then across to where we're standing. Can we walk it?" Sure. We walked the property for an hour. She showed me the boundaries, marked with old surveyor flags that were faded and barely visible. She showed me the creek, which was beautiful. Clear water burbling over rocks, surrounded by ferns and moss. She showed me the flattest areas, the places where building would be easiest. "What are you planning to do with it?" she asked. "Build a tiny house? Live off-grid?" She grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that. You're the 4th person this year who's looked at this land for the same reason." "Did any of them buy it?" "No. They all thought $32,000 was too much." "What do you think it's worth?" She hesitated. "Honestly, in this market, probably $28,000, $30,000. The seller inherited it from his uncle and just wants it gone. He lives in Florida and has no use for land in the middle of nowhere. Would he take $28,000? Maybe. Want me to ask?" "Yes." I made the offer that afternoon. Sent an email to the listing agent. "I'm very interested in the property in Ridge County. I'm prepared to offer $28,000 cash, closing within 30 days. I'm a serious buyer, and I'm ready to move quickly. Please let me know if the seller would consider this offer." I hit send and then spent the next 3 days compulsively checking my email. Day 1. Nothing. Day 2. Nothing. Day 3. Still nothing. On day 4, I got a response. The seller is willing to accept 30,000 Dash in closing within 30 days. Let me know if that works for you. $30,000. I had $28,000. I needed 2,000 more. I looked at my options. Option 1. Wait. Save for another month or two until I had the full 30,000 plus closing costs. But what if someone else bought it in the meantime? What if I lost this perfect piece of land because I couldn't come up with 2,000? Option 2. Personal loan. I could get a small personal loan for $2,000. I'd have to pay it back with interest, which would suck, but it would let me buy the land now. Option 3. Ask for help. No, absolutely not. I wasn't asking my parents for money. I'd rather wait another year than give them the satisfaction of me coming back. Hand out, proving them right. I went with option 2. Took out a personal loan for $2,500, a little more than I needed, to cover closing costs and any unexpected expenses. The interest rate was terrible. The monthly payments were going to hurt. But it meant I could buy the land now. Deal. I wrote back to Sarah. Let's move forward. Closing on land is weirdly anticlimactic. No inspections, no appraisals, no mortgage underwriters asking for 3 years of tax returns and proof that you're not secretly a financial disaster. Just paperwork. So much paperwork. I signed our documents for 2 hours at the title company. My hand cramped. I had to stop and shake it out halfway through. Sarah sat across from me, smiling encouragingly. Almost done. This is more paperwork than I expected. Land sales always are. Finally, the title company lawyer slid a folder across the table. Congratulations, he said. You're officially a landowner. I opened the folder. Inside was the deed, embossed and official looking, with my name on it. Your name? Owner. 10 acres, Ridge County. Parcel number. Number. I stared at it for a long time. You okay? Sarah asked. I realized I was crying. Not sad crying. Not even happy crying exactly. Just overwhelmed crying. I'm perfect, I said. This is perfect. I drove out to the property that afternoon. My property. I could call it that now. And parked where the driveway would eventually go. I walked into the clearing I'd already started thinking of as home. And I just stood there. The trees were bare. It was late fall, almost winter. But they were beautiful anyway. The sky was grey and heavy with the promise of snow. The air smelled like pine and cold earth. It was quiet. So quiet. No cars. No sirens. No neighbors. No sounds of the city. Just wind and birds, and the distant sound of the creek. I sat down on the cold ground and wrapped my arms around my knees. This was mine. All of it. 10 acres of land that I'd bought with money I'd saved. Money I'd earned by working 80-hour weeks and living like a hermit and sacrificing every comfort. Nobody had given it to me. Nobody had helped me. I'd done it alone. And that felt better than anything I'd ever felt in my life. I pulled out my phone and almost called my parents. Almost. I wanted to tell them. I wanted to say, Remember when you said I needed to prove myself? Well, here. I bought land. With my own money. Without your help. But I didn't call. Because I realized I didn't need them to know. I didn't need their validation. I didn't need them to be proud of it. I'd proved it to myself. And that was enough. I called Maya instead. I did it, I said, when she answered. Did what? I bought land. She screamed. Actually screamed. Are you serious? I'm sitting on it right now. Oh my God. Oh my God. Congratulations. Thanks. I'm so proud of you, she said. Like, genuinely, I'm tearing up right now. This is amazing. It's just land, I said, but I was smiling. It's not just land, it's yours. You did this. I did. So what's next? Building, I said. I'm going to build a house. By yourself? Mostly. You're insane? Probably. I love it. When can I visit? Give me a year, I said. Let me actually build something first. She laughed. Deal. But seriously, I'm so happy for you. This is incredible. Thanks, Maya. I mean it. You're my hero. I sat on my land, and watched the sky turn dark and felt, for the first time in a very long time, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Building a house from scratch when you have zero construction experience is either the bravest or the stupidest thing a person can do. I still haven't decided which category I fall into. Probably stupid. But I was committed to my stupidity, which counts for something. I spent the first 3 months just learning. I didn't touch the property except to visit on weekends, walk the land, plan where everything would go. Instead, I became a student of construction. I watched YouTube videos obsessively, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. How to frame a tiny house. Off-grid solar setup for beginners. Installing windows. Common mistakes to avoid. Composting toilets. Everything you need to know. Well drilling 101. I took notes. Filled 3 notebooks with diagrams and measurements and lists of materials. I joined online forums for tiny house builders. Asked questions. Read through years of archived posts about building codes, material recommendations, common pitfalls. I learned that most rural counties don't care what you build as long as you're not hurting anyone. No permits required for structures under a certain square footage, especially if they're not connected to utilities. I learned that solar panels have gotten way cheaper in the last decade. That rainwater collection is legal in most places. That composting toilets don't smell if you maintain them properly. I learned that I could drill a well for about $3,000, or I could hand dig one for free if I was willing to spend weeks doing manual labor. I learned that the biggest enemy of any building project is moisture. That everything needs to breathe. That shortcuts in the beginning lead to disasters later. I learned so much, and I still felt completely unprepared. But I couldn't wait any longer. I decided to start small, not with the house, with a shed. A simple 10x12 storage shed that I could build to test my skills before I committed to building an entire house. If I could build a shed, I could build a house. Or at least that's what I told myself. I bought a shed kit from Home Depot. One of those prefab things that comes in a flat pack with instructions that assume you have 3 friends and a full weekend. I had neither. But I had YouTube and stubbornness, which turned out to be almost as good. It took me 3 weekends. 3 weekends of struggling with 2x4s that were heavier than I expected. 3 weekends of screws that stripped, instructions that made no sense, and pieces that didn't quite fit together the way they were supposed to. I hit my thumb with a hammer so hard I saw stars. It turned deep purple and throbbed for 2 weeks. I dropped a wall panel on my foot. Same story. Purple, swollen, painful. I kept working anyway, because I didn't have time to stop. I cried twice. Once from frustration when I realized I'd built an entire wall wrong and had to tear it down and start over. Once from exhaustion when I was trying to install the roof panels alone and they kept slipping. But I finished it. I stood back on that third Sunday afternoon and looked at this crooked, slightly lopsided shed, and I felt like I'd summited Everest. It wasn't perfect. One corner was definitely not square. The door didn't quite close right. I'd hung it slightly crooked, and it scraped the frame when you tried to shut it. But it was standing. It was functional. It was mine. And I'd built it myself. I took a photo and almost sent it to my parents. Almost. I wanted them to see it. Wanted them to know that I was doing this, that I was capable, that their 100K was looking less impressive by the day. But I didn't send it, because I realized that sending it would mean I still cared about their opinion. And I was trying not to care anymore. Instead, I posted it to my tiny house forum. First build complete. A crooked shed, but it's mine. The responses were overwhelmingly positive. Looks great. You'll get better with each project. The first one is always the hardest. I remember my first shed. Yours looks way better than mine did. It felt good to have people celebrating the achievement instead of pointing out the flaws. With the shed complete and my confidence slightly boosted, I moved on to the actual house. Step 1. Foundation. Tiny houses can be built on wheels or on permanent foundations. Wheels meant mobility. Freedom to move if I wanted, but also meant the house would always feel temporary, would sway in the wind, would require special engineering. Foundation meant permanent, stable, real. I wanted foundation. I researched options. Full concrete slab. Expensive. Required heavy equipment. Overkill for a tiny house. Concrete piers. Cheaper. DIY friendly. Strong enough for a small structure. Skids. Even cheaper. Basically just big beams sitting on the ground, but more susceptible to moisture and settling. I went with piers. I bought a post hole digger, a manual one, because I couldn't afford to rent equipment, and spent a weekend digging holes in the ground. It was brutal. The ground was harder than I expected. Clay soil that clung to the digger. Rocks that I had to pry out by hand. My hands blistered. Then the blisters popped. Then they bled. I wrapped them in duct tape and kept digging. My back screamed, my shoulders ached. I could barely lift my arms by the end of the first day. But I got them dug. 12 holes, 3 feet deep, precisely spaced according to my foundation plan. Then I mixed concrete. Bag after bag after bag of concrete mix. Add water. Mix with a drill attachment. Pour into the holes. Set the piers. adjustable metal brackets that would hold the floor beams in the wet concrete. Use a level to make sure they are all at the same height. Wait for it to cure. It took 2 weekends. 2 weekends of mixing concrete until my arms felt like they might fall off. 2 weekends of checking and rechecking measurements, making sure everything was level and square. By the time I was done, I was covered in concrete dust. My hands were raw, and my entire body hurt. But the piers were in. I had a foundation. The floor frame was easier than I expected. I built it on the ground first, a rectangle of 2x6 pressure-treated lumber, with floor joists running perpendicular at 16-inch intervals. It was heavy, but not unmanageably so. With a come-along winch and some creative leverage, I managed to lift it onto the piers myself. I secured it with bolts, checked it for level, adjusted, checked again. It took a full day, but by evening I had a level floor frame sitting on the piers. Then came the subfloor. 3/4-inch plywood sheets screwed down to the joists. Each sheet weighed about 60 pounds. Not impossible to carry, but awkward. I dragged them one at a time from my car to the building site, then lifted them onto the frame and secured them. It took another full day, but by Sunday evening I had a floor. A real, solid, level floor. I stood on it, on this platform I'd built in the middle of the woods, and felt the weight of it. This was the foundation of my home. Everything else would be built on top of this. Framing walls was where things got complicated. I'd watched the videos. I'd read the tutorials. I understood the concept. But doing it in practice, cutting lumber to precise measurements, assembling studs at exact intervals, making sure everything was square and plumb was harder than it looked. I built the first wall on the ground, cut the top and bottom plates, the horizontal pieces that the vertical studs would attach to. Cut the studs, vertical 2x4s, spaced 16 inches apart. Assembled everything with screws and framing nails. Added a window opening, carefully measuring to make sure it was sized correctly for the window I'd bought. It took me an entire day to build one wall. Then came the hard part. Lifting it. I tried to do it alone at first. Got it about 3 feet off the ground before I realized I was going to drop it on myself and possibly die in the woods, with nobody around to find my body until spring. I set it back down and admitted defeat. I needed help. I called Maya. "I need another favor," I said. "What now?" "I need you to help me lift a wall." "Didn't we do this already?" "That was for the shed. This is for the house." She sighed. "You're lucky I love you." "I know. This weekend?" "Fine." Maya drove out that Saturday with her girlfriend Jen, who I'd met a few times and liked immediately. They took one look at the property and Jen said, "This is amazing, you're building this yourself?" "Trying to," I said. "That's badass." Together, the three of us lifted the first wall into place. It was still heavy, but manageable with 3 people. I braced it with temporary supports, checked it for plumb with a level, secured it to the floor frame. It stood. We did the same with the other 3 walls. By the end of the day, I had a 4-walled structure standing on my foundation. It looked like a house. A tiny, skeletal, unfinished house. But a house. Maya and Jen stayed for dinner. Pasta I'd cooked on a camp stove, eaten sitting on the foundation while the sun set. This is really cool, Jen said. I mean, it's crazy, but cool. Thanks. Are you going to do all of this yourself? Most of it, I said. I'll need help with some things. But yeah, mostly. That's impressive, she said, and kind of terrifying. Yeah, I agreed. It really is. The roof was the part I was most nervous about. Heights. I hate heights. Not in a phobia way, but in a my palms sweat and my heart races way. And I had to build a roof. I designed a simple gable roof, 2 sloped sides meeting at a peak. Nothing fancy, no complicated angles or valleys. Just basic geometry and a lot of screws. I built the roof trusses on the ground. Triangular frames that would support the roof. Each one took about 2 hours to cut, assemble and brace. I needed 6 of them. 3 days of work. Then came the terrifying part. Lifting them onto the walls and securing them. I built a makeshift scaffold. Basically just a sturdy ladder with a platform. So I could work at height without falling to my death. One by one, I hauled the trusses up and secured them to the top plates of the walls. Every time I was up there, I was acutely aware of how alone I was. If I fell, nobody would know. Nobody would find me. I'd just be another cautionary tale about hubris and DIY construction. But I didn't fall. I worked slowly, carefully, double-checking every screw, every measurement. It took a week, 7 days of climbing up and down the ladder, of working at height, of trying not to think about how far I could fall. But I got all 6 trusses installed. I stood back and looked at the structure. It looked like a house, a real house, with walls and a roof frame. I wanted to cry. Actually, I did cry. Just a little. I chose metal roofing because it's lightweight, durable, and relatively easy to install. Also because I didn't trust myself to install shingles properly. Metal panels it was. Each panel was 8 feet long and 2 feet wide. Not heavy, but awkward as hell. They wanted to catch every gust of wind and sail off into the trees like the world's most expensive kites. I developed a system. Drag a panel up the ladder. Rest it on the roof frame. Secure it with one hand while screwing it down with the other. Try not to think about how precarious this all was. It took forever. And the whole time I was acutely aware that one wrong move and I'd be falling off a roof in the middle of nowhere. I texted Maya halfway through. If I don't text you back in 2 hours, I've fallen off the roof. She wrote back. Stop texting and hold on to something. Fair point. It took me 2 weekends to finish the roof. 2 weekends of climbing up and down that damn ladder, of fighting with metal panels, of screwing down hundreds of screws. But I finished it. And when I was done, I had a watertight roof. I stood on the ground, looking up at my house with its shiny metal roof, and felt pride so intense it was almost painful. Windows were expensive, even the cheap ones. I bought the most basic windows I could find, double-pane vinyl, nothing fancy, from a discount building supply store. 4 windows, plus 1 door. Total cost, $800. I nearly cried at the register. Installing windows is an exercise in patience and precision. They have to be level. They have to be square. They have to be properly flashed or they leak. I measured 3 times before cutting each opening. I watched installation videos on repeat. I took my time. The first window took me 4 hours. By the fourth, I had it down to 2 hours and only moderate swearing. The door was easier. I'd bought a pre-hung door, which came already assembled in its frame. I just had to lift it into place and screw it in. Still took me 3 hours because I'm slow and paranoid about doing things wrong. But I got it done. And then I had a house with windows and a door. A house I could lock. A house I could see out of. A house that was starting to feel real. Insulation is boring but critical. I used spray foam. Expensive but effective and DIY friendly. I rented a spray foam kit and spent 2 days filling every crack and crevice in the walls and roof with expanding foam. It was messy. I got foam in my hair, on my clothes, on my face. I looked like I'd been attacked by a kin of great stuff. But when I was done, the house was sealed. No drafts. No air leaks. Just a tight, insulated shell. Drywall is hell. Let me just say that up front. Drywall sheets are heavy, 50 pounds each, awkward, 4 feet by 8 feet, and fragile. They break if you look at them wrong. And I had to hang them by myself. I rented a drywall lift, a contraption that holds the sheet in place while you screw it to the wall. It helped, sort of. I still dropped a sheet on myself and spent 10 minutes lying on the floor under 50 pounds of drywall, seriously reconsidering my life choices. But I got it done. Slowly. Painfully. One sheet at a time. By the end, I had interior walls. Smooth-ish drywall surfaces ready to paint. I stood in the middle of my house, and marveled at how it actually looked like a house inside. Not just a frame, not just a shell. A space where I could actually live. This was where I had to admit defeat and hire a professional. I'm stubborn, but I'm not stupid. Electrical work is dangerous. Mistakes can cause fires. And I didn't want to burn down the house I'd spent a year building. I hired an electrician who specialized in off-grid systems. His name was Tom. He was in his 60s, had been doing electrical work for 40 years, and had seen everything. "You built this yourself," he said when he first saw the house. "Yeah." "Impressive. Most people can't even hang a picture straight." "I'm learning as I go." "Well, you're doing a hell of a lot better than most DIY builders I've worked with." Tom installed the solar system. 8 300-watt panels on the roof. A battery bank in the shed. 4 deep-cycle batteries that would store power. An inverter to convert DC power from the panels to AC power for the house. Wiring throughout the walls. Outlets. Light switches. Light fixtures. It took him a week. It cost me $5,000. I nearly fainted when I saw the invoice. But it was worth it. Because when he was done, I had electricity. Real, reliable, off-grid electricity. I flipped a light switch, and the lights came on. And I actually started crying. Plumbing was simpler because I wasn't connecting to municipal systems. I hired a well driller. Because that's not a DIY project, unless you want to spend 6 months digging by hand. They came out with their truck and drill rig and drilled down 40 feet. Hit water. Good, clean water. They installed a pump and a pressure tank in the shed. Total cost, $3,500. I ran PEX piping myself, flexible plastic pipes that are way easier to work with than copper. Connected the well pump to a small water heater. Ran lines to the kitchen sink and bathroom. Installed a composting toilet. which is basically a fancy bucket with a ventilation fan. But it works great and doesn't smell. When I was done, I had running water. I turned on the kitchen faucet and water came out, and I just stood there watching it, feeling this overwhelming sense of accomplishment. I had built a house with running water, me, by myself. The last phase was all the detail work that turns a structure into a home. Painting the walls, soft white with warm undertones that made the small space feel bigger. Installing flooring, luxury vinyl planks that looked like wood, but were waterproof and easy to install. Building kitchen cabinets, simple open shelving made from reclaimed wood I'd found at a salvage yard. Installing a countertop, butcher block, that I'd sanded and sealed myself. Adding shelves throughout the house for storage and books. Hanging curtains, simple linen panels that let in light but provided privacy. This part took longer than I expected. Not because it was hard, but because I was exhausted. I'd been working non-stop for 18 months. Freelancing during the week, building on weekends, barely sleeping, never stopping. I was running on fumes, but I kept going because I was so close, so impossibly close. I installed the kitchen sink, connected the propane stove, hung mirrors in the bathroom, added hooks by the door for coats, built a fold-down table that could serve as a desk or dining table, installed a reading chair I'd found at a thrift store, added plants, succulents and pothos and spider plants that would thrive with minimal care, hung string lights outside for ambiance. And then, one day in October, almost exactly 2 years after I'd bought the land, I realized I was done. Not perfectly done. There were still things I wanted to add, improve, fix, but livably done. I could move in. I moved into the tiny house on a Saturday in mid-October. The weather was perfect. That golden autumn moment when the leaves are changing and the air is crisp, but not yet cold. I didn't have much to move. Everything I owned fit in my car in 2 trips. Clothes, books, laptop, kitchen supplies, bedding. That was it. I unlocked the door, my door, the one I'd installed myself, and stepped inside. The house smelled like fresh paint and sawdust and possibility. I set my bags down and stood in the middle of the space. 160 square feet of home. It was tiny. Objectively, impossibly tiny. And it was perfect. I spent the first night lying in the sleeping loft, a cozy space under the peaked roof with just enough room for my mattress, staring up at the ceiling I'd built. The ceiling I'd built. With my own hands. I could hear the sounds of the woods at night, owls hooting in the distance, wind rustling through the trees. Something, probably a raccoon, rustling through the leaves outside. It should have been scary. A woman alone in a tiny house in the middle of nowhere, no neighbors within a mile. But I wasn't scared. I felt safe. Safer than I'd felt in years. Because this was mine. I'd built it. I controlled it. No landlord could evict me. No roommate could bail and leave me scrambling for rent. No parents could judge my choices. This was my space, my rules, my life. I fell asleep smiling. Living off-grid has a steep learning curve. I learned this the hard way. Week 1. I ran out of water because I underestimated how much I'd use. I learned to be conservative. Navy showers, water onto wet, water off to soap, water onto rinse. Turn off the tap while brushing teeth. Reuse water when possible. Week 2. The solar panels didn't generate enough power on cloudy days, and my batteries died. I learned to check the weather and plan my power usage accordingly. Charge all devices when it's sunny. Use the laptop sparingly on grey days. Cook with propane instead of electric when possible. Week 3. The composting toilet needed more maintenance than I expected and started to smell. I learned to add sawdust after every use. Turn the compost weekly. Empty the bin more frequently. Week 4. I discovered mice were getting into the house through gaps I hadn't sealed properly. I learned to check for gaps, seal everything with steel wool and cork, keep food in airtight containers. There were 100 little adjustments, 1,000 tiny lessons, things breaking, things not working the way I expected, things I hadn't planned for, but I figured it out, because I had to, and because I wanted to. That first spring I planted a garden. I'd never gardened before. I killed every house plant I'd ever owned. But I'd watched videos, read books, asked advice from people at the local farmer's market. I cleared a space next to the house. Tilled the soil. Rocky, clay-heavy soil that fought me every step of the way. Added compost and amendments. Built raised beds from scrap lumber. I planted tomatoes, peppers, lettuce, herbs, basil, cilantro, parsley, squash, beans, carrots, and then I waited. Not everything grew. The lettuce bolted in the first heat wave, went bitter and inedible. The squash got eaten by something. Probably deer. Maybe groundhogs. The carrots were weird and stunted because the soil wasn't right. But some things thrived. The tomatoes produced like crazy. I had more tomatoes than I knew what to do with. The peppers grew well, jalapenos and bell peppers that I used in every meal. The herbs took over their beds, and I had to cut them back constantly to keep them from getting out of control. The beans were abundant. Green beans and pole beans that I ate fresh and froze for winter. I ate salads made entirely from things I'd grown. Made pasta sauce from my own tomatoes. Froze bags of peppers and beans for the winter months. I felt like a wizard. About 6 months after I moved in, I started thinking about the future. I'd been freelancing the whole time, working from my tiny house, making enough to cover my minimal expenses. But I wanted something more, something that aligned with what I'd learned, what I'd built. I started offering workshops. Build your own tiny house. Weekend intensive. 2-day workshop covering foundation basics, framing techniques, electrical and plumbing overview, off-grid systems, common mistakes and how to avoid them. Price: $500 per person. I posted about it on my social media, a page I'd started to document the building process. I'd been posting photos and updates throughout the construction, mostly for my own record keeping. But I'd slowly accumulated a following. People who were interested in tiny houses, in off-grid living, in doing what I was doing. I announced the first workshop, expecting maybe 2 or 3 people to sign up. 12 people registered in the first week. I was terrified. What if I couldn't teach? What if people were disappointed? What if I'd oversold my expertise? But I prepared anyway, built a second shed to use as a classroom space, put together a curriculum with handouts and diagrams, bought materials so people could practice framing a wall. The first workshop was chaotic. 12 strangers showed up at my property on a Saturday morning, all of them eager and excited and asking a million questions. I showed them my house, explained every decision, every mistake, every lesson learned. I taught them how to frame a wall properly, how to check for square and plumb, how to install windows without creating leaks. I explained solar systems and battery banks and composting toilets and well water. They loved it. They asked thoughtful questions, took detailed notes, thanked me over and over. At the end of the weekend, one woman, probably in her 50s, with kind eyes and calloused hands, hugged me and said, "You inspired me to actually do this. I've been dreaming about building a tiny house for years, and you made it seem possible." I cried in my car after they left, happy crying this time, because I'd helped someone. I'd taught someone something valuable. I'd made a difference. I ran another workshop the next month, and another, and another. Word spread. People started traveling from hours away to attend. I raised my prices to $750 per person. They still sold out. By the end of the first year of workshops, I was overwhelmed. I was still doing all the admin myself, answering emails, processing registrations, ordering materials, managing schedules. On top of teaching, on top of freelancing, on top of maintaining my property and garden. It was too much. I hired an assistant. Her name was Riley. She was 24, fresh out of college with an environmental science degree and no idea what to do with it. She'd attended one of my early workshops and fallen in love with the idea of tiny house living. She'd built her own tiny house an hour away and was living in it while working odd jobs. I offered her a position, 20 hours a week, helping with workshop logistics and admin work. She said yes immediately. Riley was amazing, organized, enthusiastic, good with people. She took over all the things I hated, emails, scheduling, customer service, and freed me up to focus on teaching and content creation. The business grew. We added more workshop types. Off-grid living basics, solar power systems for beginners, sustainable gardening in small spaces, DIY carpentry fundamentals. Each one sold out. By the end of year 2, I was making more money than I'd ever made freelancing, more than I'd made in any real job. I was successful, by any measure. By their measure. And my family had no idea. Through all of this, the building, the moving, the business, I didn't tell my family. They had no idea what I was doing. I didn't post about it on Facebook, where my parents could see. I didn't mention it in the occasional texts I still exchanged with them. When my mum asked what I was up to, I said, "Work, mostly." Which was true. She didn't ask for details. Derek called me a few times over those 2 years. "Hey, we're having people over this weekend. Want to come?" "I can't. I have plans." "You always have plans." "I'm busy." "Doing what?" "Work stuff." "What kind of work stuff?" "Just projects. It's complicated." He didn't push. Maybe he sensed I didn't want to talk about it. Maybe he was too wrapped up in his own life to really care. My parents tried a few times to re-engage. Birthday texts, holiday invitations, the occasional "we miss you." I responded politely but distantly. Thanks for the birthday wishes. Can't make Thanksgiving this year, sorry. I miss you too. But I didn't mean it. I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of having parents who supported me, but I didn't miss them. Part of me wanted to tell them. Wanted to call my dad and say, "Ming, remember when you told me I needed to prove myself? Well, here." But I didn't, because I realized something important. I didn't need to prove anything to them. I'd already proved it to myself, and that was enough.